No problem.
Okay, so thank you, Jade. I will introduce our first speaker. So our first speaker is a senior scientist and collaborations manager in Computed Tomography Research and Development at Siemens Healthineers since 2023. She is responsible for managing CT research projects with radiologists and physicists at Mass General Brigham and serves as an on-site CT scientist, playing a key role for clinical evidence generation of whole-body photon-counting CT scanners. She completed a PhD at the University of Victoria on benchtop X-ray CT imaging of novel contrast agents using X-ray fluorescence CT and photon-counting CT. She then furthered her knowledge and passion for photon-counting CT in her postdoctoral fellowship at the Mayo Clinic Department of Radiology, during which she gained experience in clinical application research in CT and networked effectively to her current position at Siemens Healthineers. So it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Chelsea Dunning. Dr. Dunning, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you so much, Chloe. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. So I'm going to share my screen. So, here we go. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see it?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to be the first speaker today, and I want to talk about how did I get here, going from academia to industry, really right post-pandemic. And so as I've introduced, my name is Dr. Chelsea Dunning. I work for Siemens Healthineers in the US, and I trained in Canada. So this is one of my favorite things. I like to put my own face over these Siemens Healthineer logos. Don't tell my boss. But I want to talk a little bit about my experience and a little bit about sort of the challenges and a little bit of my roadmap and the decisions I made in life and kind of why I did it kind of in a new post-pandemic world that we're living in. So I grew up in British Columbia. I went and did my undergrad in physics at UBC, University of British Columbia. And I was very fortunate at that time to be able to participate in the co-op program. So the co-op program, I got lots of work experience working at TRIUMPH, Canada's National Laboratory for Particle and Nuclear Physics, way back in 2013 when I was at my third year university. And it was such a wonderful place. As you can see, it's a complete mess over there, but there's so much magic happening underneath all those concrete blocks. I did a lot of projects at this world's largest cyclotron. And there was a lot of isotope production. I did lots of proton eye therapy work there. I did lots of shielding measurements and safety measurements. And I also got to work on the Bell 2 detector, building a detector prototype. I did a lot of simulation work. So here's a photo of me at my desk at the time, doing a lot of these simulations, simulating the neutron flux, for example, kind of downstream of the beam for the purpose of testing electronic chips. And during that time in my undergrad, so this was circa 2013. I'm going to make fun of myself for a little bit here. I was wearing a My Little Pony shirt, wearing sneakers. I think there's a cereal box back there and some stuffed animals. So I was like 20 years old at the time, maybe. and so yeah, so that was kind of me as a young undergrad doing research back then. And so I met a mentor when I was working at TRIUMPH, so named Clay Lindsay, and he was a grad student at University of Victoria in medical physics. And he taught me a lot about Python and doing research and medical physics in general. I had no idea what it was. And I was like, I realized I had a lot of experience in Monte Carlo simulations, working at TRIUMPH with beams, working with proton eye therapy. And I was like, you know what, based on the decision I made at this time, I was like, you know what, I have a lot of this experience. I'm going to do medical physics. I also, Clay has made the joke, I want a job at the end of my degree. So here we are. So I made the trip over to University of Victoria and did my PhD in medical physics under Dr. Magdalena Basilova-Carter. So beautiful place to live. And, being from Vancouver myself, I rode the ferry quite a lot. And, back and forth every time, life got hard. At least I could go to back home to relax for a bit. And this all, after 5 years, culminated into my PhD. and I did my PhD in, well, this is the exact title slide from my PhD. And this was my exact outfit I wore, wearing that "Trust Me, I'm a Physicist," which, allowed my committee to pass me. So I worked on a optimized tabletop X-ray fluorescence and photon counting CT imaging system. So I was very fortunate with Magdalena. She was able to secure some X-ray spectrometers where I can perform X-ray fluorescence CT, and also a prototype photon counting detector from Redland Technologies, which is a company based in near Victoria. And so one of the cool projects I'll just highlight from my PhD, which I think is a little bit relevant. What I did is I imaged some mice in a phantom loaded with gold and gadolinium. And I did like a pencil beam experiment based on some simulations I did to try to optimize this. And I was looking at the fluorescence caused by the excitation of X-rays from the X-ray beam of gadolinium and gold. And I'm using that signal highlighted in red here in this energy spectrum to make a gold or gadolinium image. Also, with this photon counting detector, which can enable K-edge imaging based on the availability of thresholds, where I superimpose the thresholds on the K-edges of gadolinium and gold, I can make really nice K-edge images with the photon counting detector. So I did a pencil beam configuration and a cone beam configuration with just photon counting CT. And we also imaged the phantom and the mouse. So I'll just show a few mouse images because those are the most interesting. So I got to, as a physicist, play with some mice, inject them with these contrast agents, and got some really nice images with cone beam and pencil beam of these mice. So this was some really cool hands-on experience I got with photon counting CT. My PhD definitely focused more on XFCT, X-ray fluorescence CT, and then I kind of pivoted toward photon counting CT because it was really interesting to me. And I also found it to be there was a lot of literature on it already. And I was like, oh, this is exciting. I want to get involved with this. So right near the end of my PhD, this is the email that changed my life. So this was look at the date, May 1st, 2020. So right after the pandemic hit, we're all stuck at home. I'm furiously writing my PhD at this like really tiny vanity desk in my one-bedroom apartment, sharing with my partner at the time. And Magdalena forwards me an email that she got from Cynthia McCullough over at Mayo Clinic for a postdoc opportunity. Magdalena says, might be of interest. Shrug shoulders. And, I figured, Mayo Clinic's pretty world-renowned, pretty up there, pretty prestigious. Hey, if this is my first postdoc opportunity, let's do it. So I applied figuring, it'll be my first postdoc interview. Let's do this. And sure enough, they hired me. And so, always don't undervalue yourself, essentially, is my life lesson there. So I got my PhD, broke up with my partner, and moved to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota in January 2021 during the pandemic. So this is living in the US in Rochester, Minnesota. Really amazing place. Rochester is a town of 120,000 people, and 40,000 of them work for Mayo Clinic. So a bit of an interesting company town there, but it was really nice. The campus downtown is all these Mayo Clinic buildings, lots of bright minds there, lots of fun equipment to play with. And so when I joined the CT Clinical Innovation Center under Dr. Cynthia McCullough and Dr. Shuai Leng, I got to work with those two. I went from playing with the benchtop CT system to a brand new toy. The Neotom Alpha at Siemens is the first whole body clinical photon counting detector CT scanner that the lab at Mayo Clinic got as part of their research agreement. And so as soon as I started in February 2021, I got the RSNA deadline. RSNA is a big radiology conference. The CTCIC always submits everything to RSNA. I had a couple months to put together a bunch of abstracts before May 1st, 2021. And so walking in that lab was like, we're getting a scanner. We need to do all this research. And it was a little bit overwhelming for sure. but I prevailed. I published 3 papers during my time there, and lots more conference abstracts. So I got to kind of do a bit of the academic life, going to RSNA, presenting posters at conferences, presenting um, talks at chapter meetings at APM and other places. And now keep in mind, I only had a couple months between my PhD and my postdoc. And at the end of my PhD, I was supposed to go to Japan for a research trip, and of course the pandemic couldn't let me go at that time, and so it was a little bit of miss out, and I wanted to get started with my life and move on. Um, so yeah, I didn't really have like a break after my PhD. I didn't really have a break at all during my postdoc either. So I was starting to feel a little bit burnt out doing academia. And basically what happened is, during my time at Mayo Clinic, moving to a town where I knew absolutely nobody, I started talking to people. I started making friends. Around when I moved there, people were getting vaccinated. Things started opening up again, and I was networking also with the lab. People in the CIC at Mayo Clinic are all very friendly people, all doing lots of activities together. And I want to highlight this picture in particular because of the people in it. Um, so the woman next to me here, she's the Siemens collaboration manager that covers Minnesota, and in particular Mayo Clinic. And so she is someone that was a postdoc and moved to industry. And so getting to talk to her, I got to learn about what she did, and also seeing her join our meetings and do her job kind of allowed me to inadvertently job shadow her. and and so I got curious, and she was someone that's very like open and was easy to talk to about making that jump to industry. And so it got me thinking, I wanted to maybe consider industry as a career, especially since during my PhD, a lot of people went the clinical route. No shade to the clinical people, but I'm wasn't that excited about clinical medical physics at the time. So I went to the International Society of Computed Tomography. So this is one of the conferences that I went to during my time at Mayo Clinic. This is a conference that Cynthia McCullough runs. And I decided that I'm going to this conference. I'm really wanting to do industry. There was going to be a bunch of industry people at this conference. So I'm sitting there with my friends from the CTCIC, and I say, I'm going to talk to as many people as I can from industry and tell them that I'm looking for a job. And the conference apps they give you. So I just started, posting everywhere saying, I'm looking for a job. I'm looking for a job. And maybe I should have talked to Cynthia first. I was a little sorry. But essentially, my colleagues at Siemens were there, and we had breakfast together. And they told me, oh, there's a position in Boston opening up for a collaborations manager. So exactly my colleague's job that I got to know at Mayo. And I said, oh, when are you looking to hire for that? Because I'm not going to be ready for at least another 6 months. And they said, oh, we're not in a hurry to hire or anything. And but they're like, oh, you better apply soon. We're getting a lot of really good candidates. And George here, my future boss, had said, well, he's got to go through a lot of good candidates, and you're going to make his job a lot harder if you add yours. And then I said, I'm going to make his job easier because he's going to hire me. And then we just laughed and laughed and laughed. And sure enough, they hired me. And I found myself packing everything I own in my SUV, and I made the trip over to Boston. I wanted to swim in all the Great Lakes on the way, saw Niagara Falls, where I was waiting for my TN visa appointment. And so now I live in Boston. I've been living here for the last nearly 2 years, and maybe I'll get into exactly what I do as an industry scientist. So what I do is, so I'm based in Boston, and my team here is based all over the U.S. All of us are PhDs in engineering, physics, computer science, etc. And we cover different sites, and we're strategically placed where we have collaboration sites. So I cover in particular Brigham and Women's Hospital and Massachusetts General Hospital, and I'm sure I'll get more sites as I start to gain more responsibilities. And so essentially the main thing of Siemens is we have different products. So one of the big things that I know are being talked about right now is the Tom Alpha, the big CT scanner. That's photon counting. And we also have various other software and such that we're launching. So a lot of these researchers, such as radiologists, cardiologists, physicists, they're all excited about the new Siemens technology, and they all want to do research in clinical applications to improve patient care. So all this very specialized research they want to do with all these new toys and new tools requires a little bit of expertise. So this is where I come in. So Siemens, of course, wants to demonstrate that the product will improve patient care. And so we work closely with these medical professionals and these key opinion leaders in order to show and demonstrate to the scientific field that these products really do improve patient care in these ways. And so my job is providing this on-site support at Mass General Brigham in particular for research and development. So I'm on site providing some project management, some CT expertise. So all of us are all CT experts in particular. There's a fair amount of relationship management as well. So being a physicist with people skills is very important in my job. And I'm also a direct link to headquarters as well. And so I get to interface with people from Germany all the time. So it requires me to be a little bit of an early bird because they're all asleep by the time I want to start work. And but overall, it's been a very rewarding career. I get to talk to a lot of people. I get to talk about science. I'll highlight some cool research, for example. So in particular, my collaborations do a lot of emergency radiology topics. So showing here is an image where the Natom Alpha enables these color maps showing iodine and water image, for example. And we can see with the enhanced resolution and spectral imaging on the photon counting that there is a duct connecting the cyst to this pancreatic duct here. And so basically this rules out cancer. And then the ED patient can just go home right away and not have to stew and wait around waiting for a follow-up MRI. And then also in my lab too, so this is all published research if you're curious, does the patient have calcium in the brain or is it an active hemorrhage that is going on? So instead of having the patient wait for 6 hours for another CT, there's this spectral post-processing technique here that the radiologist can rule out that this orange bit here is actually calcium and not hemorrhage, and the patient can go home. I also get to do research too, so it's a really fun bit of my job. So by nature of having all these cool toys around me on my free time, and also as part of building my CT expertise, I have a project I'm working on. So I'll give a very brief sort of preview. Is we're scanning this phantom and kind of looking at how the shoulders impact the image quality. And so here's some noise power spectrum measurements I did, and as a function of, say, the dose. And well, I haven't had to use my Python skills at all, really, in this job. It was really nice to be able to do that again. So that's kind of a little preview about what I'm about and sort of how I got here. A lot of just stumbling, but I made it. So I hopefully that is. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, Dr. Denise. So just a reminder, we'll leave time for questions at the end of the three talks. So if you have questions, just keep them in mind. So we'll go right away to our next speaker. So our second speaker has been enjoying her career in LINAC and software solutions at Elekta after a long career as a clinical physicist in Canada and the UK. Her focus is to modernize radiation oncology workflow and minimize the gap between clinical and industry radiation oncology. She is an adjunct professor at the Department of Physics at Toronto Metropolitan University and has completed her University of Toronto Rotman Global Executive MBA in Healthcare and Life Sciences in 2020. She is enthusiastic about promoting women and working towards creating a truly diverse and equitable working environment within Elekta and within radiation oncology communities. Through her career, though her career plays a huge part in her life, her proudest achievement thus far is being a mom of two very active, opinionated children. So let's welcome our speaker, Dr. Young Lee. Dr. Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, so yeah, this is my journey, I guess, into industry. I did have a very long career within the clinic, and I jumped in, and so this is really my own journey into industry. I'm going to talk a little bit about my role just before joining industry, and then really why I did it, and then some opinions that I have on clinical medical physics versus industry physics roles, and then give you a little summary, or I guess what my thoughts are on in working in both careers. So I transitioned in the early 2020. At the time, I was in the clinic. I had 17 years of clinical experience. And by the time of transition, I was leading the CNS physics group within Sunnybrook Hospital, leading gamma knife, spine SBRT programs. I had a couple of appointments through different universities. We were publishing papers. I was doing a lot of clinical trials, heavily involved in clinical trials through the Canadian Clinical Trials Network, and I was Canadian representative in the NCTN, which is the American Clinical Trials Network. And I was also a member of a quality, Canadian quality team, and this is sort of within the clinic. Outside the clinic, I was doing a lot of things as well, and that was mainly because I just get very curious about different things that are happening. At the time, I didn't realize I was really learning also about sort of leadership skills as well as I guess networking, but I got very heavily involved with comp. And so I was an executive board member as a treasurer for comp. I served that for 6 years. I also chaired the Comp ASM that was in Ottawa. That's the annual scientific meeting in 2017. I also was really interested in, because I ended up having kids, and I was really interested in how kids get into sort of science, interested in learning about careers. I think I started thinking about sort of my career and how I got introduced to medical physics very late in my knowledge. I didn't really know that existed in my high school or even in the beginning of my undergrad. And so I got very interested in how that gets introduced at the time, and so I ended up doing these kind of talking to the people walking around the street, and that's my son at the time. He's now 15, so he doesn't look like that anymore. He's 5'9", and so getting my kids involved in it, and I thought that would be really fun. And during all of this time, I then got really curious about other things. So I ended up doing an MBA while I was actually working. And yeah, so I kept really, really busy. And so I definitely had a really, I think, a fun career. I know clinical physics isn't for everybody. For me, it was really I did enjoy that part of my career. So why then transition? Well, I had some personal things happen. My dad got ill in 2013, and then so I ended up experiencing a very different part of healthcare. He ended up getting many tests because his the thing he had was quite complicated. It wasn't something very simple. So I ended up seeing these like crazy different parts of the hospital through surgeries, radiation therapy, but rehabilitation care, as well as like looking at plasma exchanges, things that I really did not get exposed to. And during that period, I actually realized how little of healthcare I understood. And so this exploration of my influence within healthcare changed a lot, and my views changed a lot. And so I was no longer interested in just kind of having one career. And this is when I decided to pursue an MBA. And during this time, so while I was actually just before I had completed my MBA is when I got a recruitment call from Electa. And because I was really into wanting to change or had this mindset, I actually changed career. So it just happened to be some opportunities I ended up taking. This is a couple of the pictures of sort of how different I think clinical physics is to working in industry, just to give you an example. But I'll go into that in the next couple of slides. So I started this journey in industry in May 2020. Um, it was very interesting because I accepted the job before the pandemic hit, so before COVID, and I ended up starting right after COVID hit. which meant that the job that I thought I was going into, which Chelsea actually alluded to, traveling and all of these things just stopped. And so I ended up working from home. I was supposed to be going into an office, and all of these things changed at the same time. And so there was a lot of adjusting of not knowing what to do, because I was in a career where I had worked for 17 years. So I kind of knew what was going on every single day. I was the person who was teaching to somebody who, like, I wasn't sure what my role was, exactly what I'm supposed to do on a daily basis. And I didn't have somebody I could just ask next to me. And so I ended up having to become very proactive and having to learn to really try to increase my exposure, try to talk to people, actually doing a lot of these cold kind of calls to figure out what I needed to do. And so actually it really changed, I think, how I ended up approaching my work, as well as learning a lot about myself as well. And so I started setting and meeting my own expectations, and those expectations changed as it went. And within a few months, I became fairly familiar with what I was supposed to be doing, how to do it. Realized, how to get connected to people, and then I also realized a lot about sort of my connections and how I can utilize that to help other people connect better. And so got involved in many, many different projects within the company. So, if I were to say clinical versus industry, I think everyone thinks they're very different, but in many ways, there's a lot of similarities. So, for instance, you're always working within teams somewhere. Those team makeup may be very different, and so jobs and roles may be very different. But you are also working under a structure of some sort. You will have managers, you will have people that you may be managing. You'll be working with different individuals, and those are not different whether you're working in the clinic or in the industry. However, the managers that you're used to, I think within the clinic, obviously, are going to be medical physicists, if you're a medical physicist, compared to, I think, within a company, you can have all sorts of managers with different backgrounds. And so I think that's kind of interesting. Communication skills. Just in general, all of the communication skills you'll learn as a student, as a resident, or in the clinic are all useful. Making reports, so any oral communication of some sort, reports, presentations, all of those things are useful whether you're in the clinic or in industry. However, I think I would say the difference in presentations is that there would be definitely more alignment that will be done within industry. And so, for instance, you may need to get that checked if you're presenting something, let's say, for AAPM or comp, you want to make sure that the communication you're doing isn't just from like something on the top of your head, but as the company wants to present it as well. And there's a lot of meetings, whether you're in clinic or in industry. However, these things are a little bit different because I joined industry during the pandemic, and so things have also evolved within clinics as well. But there are just a lot of meetings, but I would say within industry, they may be much more structured, and there will be more evaluations, I think structured evaluations within industry. There was supposed to be a lot of travel with my job. And so there is travel, obviously, while whether or not you work in hospital or in industry. I would say in general, depending on the type of role you take on, you could be traveling a lot more. And so the type of role that I have does have a fair bit of travel that could be associated with it. However, if you're working as an engineer or if you're working as a physicist in research, you could be actually not, you may not be traveling at all in industry. So yeah, so there's just this kind of very similar stuff that I did not expect in industry, but at the same time, there are things that are different. And I would say the biggest thing is that you are working with individuals that are not just within kind of the clinic. So in radiation oncology, which was what I was working in, I would have mainly worked with radiation oncologists, radiation therapists, and different roles within the hospital. But obviously, in a company, you're working with a lot of different people with a lot of different sort of backgrounds. So, what did I bring into industry? Well, I think, having a lot of clinical knowledge is hugely valuable within industry, and mainly because I'm working in a company that is radiation oncology related. And so that clinical knowledge about workflows, protocols are useful. Having worked with a lot of other clinical professionals has become very handy, being able to actually a lot of people, a lot of groups have run things by me mainly because of the clinical experiences that I've had. The teaching and training I used to do, I think that's carried over very easily into industry, and the research and development that I used to do also has come in very handy. The things that I never thought about until I came into industry, or I guess I knew in the back of my mind that are very useful and that I think I bring up fairly often now, are the soft skills I had acquired through my clinical training or clinical experiences. I think having good communication skills, and this is not just making presentations or being able to present, but being able to also talk to people, being able to communicate well, being able to read the room and things like this, I think is very, very useful. I think having good organizational skills, which again, I think within the clinic you develop mainly because you have deadlines, you have different things that you're working on, and so time, scheduling, organizing, work on units, actually have transferred really well into my career as well. Something I never ever thought about was negotiation. I think as a medical physicist, you were always negotiating within the clinic, talking to different individuals about getting time on the machine, maybe talking to your manager in order to get time to do research, or all of these things, skills actually have translated really well into industry because you are constantly having to negotiate to get things done, especially when you're working with a lot of teams. The type of job I have, so I work in product management, but I'm a medical physicist within that organization. I actually network with a lot of different teams within the company. And so being able to, I think, communicate really well and being able to also translate the information that you need to give, depending on who you're talking to, I think has been really useful. Networking, without actually thinking about networking, I think just by being able to change career, I've ended up meeting a lot of different individuals through not only within the clinics but within industry, and being able to, I think, connect people to get work done has been a huge asset as well. So I think this is my last slide. I think what I want to say is being open to change with your career, I think is really, really good. Being able to have, I think if you do have some clinical medical physics background, that's also very useful. But as you've seen with Chelsea's journey, going in from academia into industry, is there's a huge number of jobs, I think, within industry that that can be that's open to, I think, this kind medical physics group of people. There are many ways we can utilize our learnings, and that's something I've realized, I think, within the last 4 years of my career in industry. Utilizing and being able to use your expertise and share information, I think, readily in order for work to get completed, I think has been really good for my career. I think being career curious is good. As everyone I think in this group is here because we're talking about sort of different types of career you can have within medical physics, and you may not actually stay in one type of career all the way through, and that's kind of where what has happened to me, and that wasn't actually planned at all. I mean, I did really think that I was going to be in clinical physics for the whole of my career, and this transition happened because of different things that have happened in my life. And so being, I think, career curious is always good, and learning from others is always useful. If you do have mentors, or if you find good mentors, utilize them well. I think mentors don't always have to be people who are in someone who you always have to look up to, or somebody who's in a really high sort of level of career, but you can also use your peers to learn from each other and be able to move each other forward. And that's all I have to share today.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. So we'll go right away to the next. So we're a bit short on time. So our last speaker's journey began at Electa, where he excelled in a variety of roles and where his exceptional leadership and contributions were recognized in 2017 when he was honored with the Electa Leadership Award. He then transitioned to Siemens, serving as Director of Global Education and Training, where he played a pivotal role in advancing education initiative within the company. Most recently, he has taken on the role of Director of Customer Success and Outreach at Sun Nuclear, furthering his commitment to improving outcomes for clients and patients through innovation and collaboration. So everyone, please welcome our third speaker, Dr. Paul Nain.
Hey guys, how you doing? Just doing a quick mic check. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, fantastic. All right. So first of all, I wanted to open by saying thank you. Thank you to Comp and the organizers for inviting me to speak with you guys. And then Young and Chelsea, is always fantastic to listen to you guys. So I really appreciate your talks as well. But most of all, I wanted to say thank you to all of you guys as the participants who've taken the time out of your day to come and watch this. And you know, Chelsea, the organizers were asking me, hey, can you spend a bit of time talking about your career? And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. Then I realized, Houston, we have a problem. I'm English people. If you've ever worked with English people, we cannot talk about ourselves. If you know English people, try it. It doesn't work. We just kind of stop. So I'm not going to talk about myself. I'm going to give a quick outline of my career path, but I really wanted to talk about your career paths more than I wanted to talk about my career paths. And I will add, having heard Chelsea talk about, you know, her groundbreaking research, and then listen to Young casually mention, you know, switching careers, doing an MBA, raising 2 children while her husband was sick, I'm really glad I'm not highlighting my own career path, which by comparison is very simple. But with that said, I did want to raise, we classify myself now as mid-career, so I'm 42 years old. I have degrees in engineering and medical physics, and I've been in industry for 18 years. The key year here is 2014. And if you draw your attention to that tiny purple text, which I now realize I probably should have made larger, it says started hiring. So what I mean by that, it was 2014 when I was given the privilege and opportunity to hire medical physicists, but also therapists, dosimetrists, engineers, analysts, program managers, all that type of stuff, started in 2014. So I guess I've been a hiring manager for about 11 years now. And I wanted to share some of the things that I've observed during those 11 years with you guys. So hopefully it will be useful to you as you progress through your careers. All right, let me switch to the next slide. Okay, and I will start with the number one mistake that is made typically by physicists, graduate physicists, coming into interview processes. And that is, drum roll please, coming into the interview and focusing on making sure that everybody knows that you're really smart and very intelligent. You don't need to do that, okay? So we know that you have incredible intellectual capabilities by the time you get to the interview process. We know this because you have a master's or a PhD in medical physics. You would not have got that if you were not incredibly intelligent. So save the intelligent stuff for maybe impressing a boy or a girl in the bar, or for mum and dad to show off their newly minted physicist in the family at the Christmas party. That's where the intellect comes into it. But during an interview process, honestly, you've already proven yourself, guys. However, that said, and I should have said this before, if you have your phone handy, that could be helpful. There's 3 QR codes in this talk. There is some knowledge that could be helpful to you if you are looking at industry, if you're looking at regulatory, and if you're looking at policy roles. So if you were to scan and bookmark that, which you don't have to, but if you want to, you could, it will take you to the AAPM report 365. Specifically, section 3.7 is a list of topics which would be helpful if you want to go into those 3 areas. Now, it does not go any deeper than this is a subject area that you should be aware of. And I would strongly recommend that you do not become an expert in each of these areas. But going into an interview and understanding, hey, you know what? I actually acknowledge that this is an area that exists that I need to learn more about. And maybe if you Google or Chat GPT that area and can go 1 or 2 sentences deep on it, that will be really helpful for you to understand, for the interviewer to understand that you understand the type of role that you're going for. So knowledge, super important, but don't focus on that too much. Make sure that you have plenty of time to focus on your skills and behavior. So next up, I'll talk a little bit about skills, and I'm sure some of you who are recent graduates have been getting quite frustrated with the job postings, which all say experience must be 3 to 5 years, which is great if you've got 3 to 5 years experience, but there's no jobs out there that necessarily say 0 experience, welcome, or preferred 0 years of experience. Please remember that don't think of it as experience. Think of it as skill. When people are saying, do you have experience? They're actually saying, do you have skill? And skill really is the application of the knowledge that you have and making it practical for a job. So for example, ion chambers, I guess probably all of you guys know the theory of how an ion chamber works. But unless you've had the opportunity to set one up on a tank, you may not be able to apply that theory. So that's just an example, right? So it's really important if you have the opportunity for internships, residencies, placements, that type of stuff, do them, like make the most of them, really highlight that. But I know that that's not easy, right? I get that. So in lieu of that, if you do recognize that perhaps you don't have the skill that you wish you had and you haven't had the opportunities, highlight areas where you have applied technical knowledge and you've applied that in a real world circumstance, which are outside of radiation therapy. I once hired a medical physicist who'd never been in a clinic, but had experience of designing gaming apps. And he was absolutely fantastic and was a brilliant medical physicist. But that was the skill that we needed to see, that he could convert technical knowledge into practical knowledge. And last is behavior. So behavior, it's a true story. I wasn't sure I was going to tell this story, but I might as well. I once had a call from the HR team. Hey, Paul, you've made some really good hires recently. Would you mind giving a short talk to other hiring managers on what your method is for hiring? And without thinking, my response to that was, oh, sure. I just hire people who give a beep. And then as I watch these words come out of my mouth, like a third-party experience, I'm watching myself say this. And it wasn't to one HR person. This was to the whole HR team. There were Swedish people on this call. There was dead silence. They kind of looked at me. But I realized that what I was trying to say was, if you hire people who care, that dictates behavior. They will go out and get the knowledge that they need. They will learn the skills that they need if you find somebody who gives a beep / cares, right? So joking aside, you all got into this field because you care. Please make sure that you are transmitting that very clearly as you go into these situations and these interview situations, so that people know what motivates your behavior to gain knowledge and to learn those skills. Okay, I'm not going to go into this in detail, but I did want to include it just in case you wanted any further information. So Young and Chelsea, I think, touched upon this. There's lots of roles in industry. This does not include regulatory and policy. So please understand those are 2 other branches of career path, but I'm not covering them in this talk. If you look at that video, it's 14 minutes. It is a video, not a PDF, from 2018, but I think most of it is relevant now, which will highlight some skills and knowledge that are required for different roles in industry. It will help you match your skills and your knowledge to something that you might be like, I never thought of that job before. So if you are interested, this may give you a next step. All right, final slide. I wasn't sure how to close this talk, if I'm honest with you, and I thought I started with thank you, so I can't really close with thank you, but I figured it'll be okay is probably a good way to close it. And what I mean by that is, as I said earlier, I'm 42 years old. I've been doing this for 20 years. So I went into the industry 20 years ago, and I totally appreciate that right now going into your first roles must induce quite a lot of anxiety, right? I get it. I just started at Sun Nuclear a few weeks ago, so I've been sending my resume off, and I don't think it's a bad resume, but the AI bots could reject it in 18 seconds flat, right? And so I get it. It's got to induce anxiety, but I think it will be okay. And in fact, I'm sure it'll be okay, and I'll tell you why. The challenges we have in radiation therapy are not being solved by the 42-year-olds or the 52-year-olds or the 62-year-olds. No offense to those guys. We are not solving all the problems. You guys are. The graduates and near graduates that I'm working with are the guys who are bringing the ideas, who are thinking and solving problems differently. Radiation therapy will not proceed at the rate that it has done for the past probably 100 years without you guys. So you are needed and you are welcomed into the radiation therapy field, and I look forward to working with you guys. All right, with that said, closing statement, please do not be inspired by this talk. I don't want you to be inspired by this talk. I want you to be empowered by this talk. So my LinkedIn QR code link thing, whatever it's called, is there. If you do have questions, because I know we're running late on time, you are welcome to reach out. Bear with me if I don't get back to you quickly, but I will do my very best to get back to you. With that, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Great talk. So yeah, we're at the Q&A. So we have a few minutes. If you have questions, you can write them in the chat or raise your hand if you want to ask them verbally. I'm just gonna wait if there's question. Don't be shy, guys.
If not, I'm happy to ask a question to start it out. I was wondering if you guys could talk about how career growth and advancement in industry might be different compared to like academia or compared to the clinic.
Well, I think, I mean, Paul has been working in industry for a long time. What I've seen in the last 4.5 years is if you wanted to climb up the ladder, so there's different ways of advancing, I think, in industry compared to climbing up the ladder, let's say, in radiation oncology clinical physics. The path that you have in clinical physics is just kind of that one path, right? So you're either going to be a physicist working in the clinic, or you're really going to be that head of department, and then there's some sort of section roles that you can get, but really it's binary. Like you're either a person working in the clinic or you're a head of department. Within industry, there's a lot of like convoluted paths. So even within the 4 years, I've seen people going straight into like a management type of role and then jumping into other management roles. So you can also advance that really quickly by actually leaving the company and then coming back. And so there's like different ways of doing that. But then you can also, I remember when I joined the company, someone actually said to me, you can also become like a unicorn within the company. What that means is that you can actually advance your career without actually being in management, but you can actually share your expertise and you can actually become a very core part of the company. And that could be within research and development or within some type of like a role where you're connecting people, or you can be in a role where you're bringing in research that's being done and then actually translating it into a product. And so there's a lot of different ways of doing that. So I think you can actually advance your career by not being in management, or you can actually advance within management, and that can look very different depending on what department you sit in.
I just wanted to add too, especially depending on the size of the company you work for in industry, like Siemens Healthineers is a huge company, so there's plenty of different paths that I could go if I wanted to, climb when I want to climb up the ladder. But if you're working for like a startup, for example, or a smaller company, then I mean it's like one of those things where there isn't really like you're kind of growing with the company as it goes up. In my thought anyway for that. So, but I don't think I have enough. I think Young hit it on the head right there.
Yeah, and just to chime in on that one, absolutely. You move around. There is no defined career path in industry. There was, some of you may remember Colleen Kennedy. She was the president of radiation oncology for Varian, and directed like the production of the Halcyon machine, and that was under her guy's medical physicist. But she became the top person of Varian. Richard Hausman was the CEO of Electa. Same thing, was a medical physicist. So, honestly, you'd be surprised at where your physics skills translate. One of my biggest frustrations with people coming up to me and saying, hey, I never see physics jobs advertised. Just because it doesn't say physicist in the job title doesn't mean you can't be one. I use Monte Carlo for budgeting because I learned Monte Carlo as part of treatment planning, but it's really, really good on the financial side as well. So the tools you have translate, they really do translate. So please don't think that if the job description doesn't say physicist, that you're not going to be amazing at it.
Thank you so much for that question. I believe we have someone from the audience. Roman, would you like to ask?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, I'm Roman. I'm just to introduce myself quickly. I'm a grad student at Dalhousie in Nova Scotia. Um, I was just wondering, as it compares to clinical positions or academic positions, what's the job security like in industry? Because I know that might be a concern for some people working in private industry, where they might presume that the job security isn't to the same level that it would be, especially in Canada, where clinical positions are obviously going to be public sector as opposed to private sector, if there is a difference.
Um, I mean, I'm sure we can talk about this a lot. I would definitely say from what I've seen in the last 4.5 years, if you go into the clinical route, your job is definitely more secure. I mean, that's a very simple answer to a very complicated question. At this moment in time, I mean, because of the pandemic, there's been a lot of shifting within companies as well. However, I think what I've actually realized is that there are jobs. And so even if within industry, what you learn is that there's a lot of different types of jobs that you can do. And so I think the availability of things that you can do and move around, it could actually be an opportunity to have to move. And so I think your career mindset would be very different, or it is now for me. But job security, if you wanted to stay in one job, I would definitely say go in the clinic because your job is definitely like 100% almost secure within that environment. It is not in industry.
I think in my case, again, being for a big company, my impression is it's probably a bit more stable than say a startup, but I feel pretty confident my job's gonna be permanent. Like I'm not in I'm not worried at all about my position being eliminated. In fact, mine was created to have someone dedicated in Boston. And I think my job in particular, because I work remote, my team is decentralized. We all cover different strategic areas around the U.S. Um, it was pretty well suited to shifting to work from home because we already did that beforehand. Um, and I also, you know, where we have a lot of work with photon counting CT, which is like the body of knowledge right now is just vastly growing exponentially. It feels like so I feel pretty safe in my position because research is just going up and up and up, and we need to meet those demands.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so we have other questions. Alex, you can ask your questions.
Yeah, hi. Quick introduction. I'm Alex. I'm at Carleton in Ottawa as a grad student. It's good to see Jade again. I know we touched base over the summer. I guess my question was, one of the things I think about often is the difference between the stressors in academia versus clinic. Obviously, those are very different. In clinics, you're dealing with people's health and their lives. In academia, there's deadlines and funding. And I was hoping you could say a little bit about the different stressors that might come up in industry that we might not see in academia or clinics, or how they are similar to one or the other.
Everything still is done last minute. That is human nature. Everything is last minute. Oh, we need to get this done ASAP. Like everyone's expecting I have a pocket full of miracles and I make them happen. But man.
Yeah, I mean, like in the clinic, I think you deal with a daily kind of things that have to be done like right away, right at that moment in time. And so, I would say within industry, yeah, there's like huge deadlines that you have to meet, and there's people chasing you, but it's not the same kind of stress level. I didn't mind the stress that we had in the clinic. It is definitely different. I mean, working from home, I mean, even if someone's chasing down what you're supposed to be doing, I mean, there's nobody like standing here and chasing me down. And so my stressors at this moment in time are very different. But at the that doesn't mean it's not stressful, mainly because I think there are the way, let's say, for instance, I think people get paid are a little bit different. And so there may be certain structure of, like, say, bonus that's tied to you not delivering. And so I think those kind of stresses can be very stressful in industry. And so they are different. But I would definitely say there's less daily, like, have to do it right this minute, is not really there for industry.
Yeah, and what I'll comment, I went straight to industry, right? So I don't think I'm qualified to compare industry to research or excuse me, clinical, as you phrased it, Alex. But the only thing I will say is that whatever team you work for, choose a team. Like, the stresses are always going to be there. They're always going to they're going to go up and down. Choose a team that's going to basically, excuse my language, bail your ass out when you get stressed, who's going to really help you out. And I've been very lucky in my career to be working with people who they'll see you stressed and they will jump in. What can I do to help you out? Choose that team. And I think that doesn't matter whether it's clinical or research or whatever. Choose the team that's going to bail you out, and then you're going to bail them out. That would be my comment for that one.
Yeah, I want to add too, my team is like that too. Anytime one of us is stuck with something or needs advice or needs someone to step in or take on something, I feel very well supported.
Sounds good. Yeah, makes sense. That's kind of the dream. So thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions, and if it's all right with our speakers, perhaps we could wrap up these 2 questions, and then that will be the end of today's C3 session. So our first question is from Kahim.
Hello, everyone. Could you be able to hear me well? All right. First of all, thank you so much for the whole event and all the presentation. I guess my question will be quick. So first, I am a grad student at the University of Manitoba. My question is, like, I often make bad decisions, let alone that I've never been to, like, actually into clinical or industry. But how easily that you think if I go to industry and then go back to clinical? Or is there any biases people think about? Like,
so I could probably jump in. There's a couple of people I've worked with in my career who I call them the yo-yo physicists, because they yo-yo in and out. And these guys are fantastic. They bring in insight. They bring in both directions, right? They bring insight. They bring experience. They do go between the two fluently and amazingly. And I've worked very closely with some of them. I will say I know there's some challenges there because I think the certification or maintenance of certification can become challenging. So that's just something to be aware of and to look into. And I'm not well versed on that. In my opinion, I'd love to hear Chelsea and Young's thoughts on this one. It is perfectly normal. It is very much appreciated by the organizations that these guys work for.
Oh yeah, I mean, so even within the 4 years I've seen people yo-yo back or come back, and there's always a debate. I think if you have been qualified and you've been working in the clinic, whether or not it works out better for you. There's some personal aspects of people jumping back and forth as well. But I've only seen real positives, like, from people who've done that. Usually they do it because they have reasons for doing it. And I think within industry, I think it's beneficial to have people have very recent clinical knowledge coming back to them as well. And so really, I think, my last slide really talked about being open to career changes. I mean, if you have a clinical certification, then I think you always have that option of being able to do that.
Yeah, well said, Young.
thank you so much for the input.
Okay, so our last question was actually answered in the chat. So I think we're going to give a huge round of applause to all of our speakers. Thank you for taking the time to come out today and speak to all of the students. We really do appreciate it. And thanks for everyone who attended today's session. I'll give you a round of
Can I
applause.
just do a plug for AAPM actually has a non-clinical working group. Both Chelsea and I are a part of, and maybe we can, rope Paul into it as well. But I think if you are interested in this sort of career, and if you're an AAPM member, it might be something that you may want to follow, because we do have meetings, and it's a committee of non-clinical physicists who could be from academia, industry, and so anything outside of clinical environment.
That sounds great. I'm sure you'll rope at least a few people in from today.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.